Lights, camera, action.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another review, and today we're going to be talking about Evil Dead Burn. So essentially this movie follows a woman who her husband is in a tragic accident at the beginning of the movie, and therefore she has to go back to her in-laws' house to try to figure out kind of like get stuff settled and all that good stuff. And along the way, her in-laws start to slowly turn into these deadites who are on the hunt for something. So the Evil Dead franchise is one that I actually really enjoy. It's one that it stays pretty consistent with itself. I don't think there's really a bad movie among the group of them. Yeah, I feel like there's some weaker ones, but not really like an overall bad one. So it stays consistent with its franchise so far. And I'm happy to say that this is one that is easily just as good and consistent as all the others, but it's not my favorite. So I will start out with saying that I think this movie is one of the most pleasing, aesthetically beautifully Evil Dead movies that we've had. I think there is a lot about this movie that is just great to look at and very appealing to the eye. And really, it is consistently like that through the entire movie, while setting up, like I said, different shots throughout. Like, it's for different things, like for some of the death sequences, some of the cool stuff they do with the Deadites, even some of just the like shots of how they do some fighting sequences and how things is kind of done as a oneer here and there. I think it's so pleasing. Even how they do some of the more creepier sequences in the movie, I think they all look really great. And like I said, this is probably one of the most polished looking Evil Dead movies that we have, and it's just very stunningly beautiful to look at. I think everything about it works in its favor. There's even great camera angles with how they do stuff with the Deadites and how they execute certain things that I think is really cool. How, like, you know, there's a Deadite sliding up the wall with somebody, and the camera turns with them as they're going, almost like this fluent movement while they've got something over the character's head and whatnot. And it's really cool how it plays out and then zooms out and shows you the whole shot. Really a lot of cool shots like that, even down to other cooler, like smaller shots where it's just real effective and simple, but one of the characters, let's just say, is missing some fingers, and it's following that character going up the stairs, but it's got her hand on like the rail and just going up the stairs and like just leaving the blood trail, and it's following that as they go up the stairs. So I think that's a really cool, effective shot. Just real simple stuff like that that's just really, really cool. Even down to the cinematography standpoint, to where you have these shots where you'll see, like, for example, a character like standing out in the snow, and like, you know, all the way that they go about shooting it with the snowfall and him kind of in that center frame is really beautiful. And there's a shot near the end of the movie where it's like, you know, our main character is running through this kind of like this wooded area, but behind it, it's almost like this big open sky, and it's nothing but smoke and like red light, like you know, like obviously something's on fire. But the way that that looks with like her like silhouette in the middle is just really beautiful. Like, there's multiple shots in this movie that is just really appealing to look at. So I think from a director's standpoint and a cinematographer standpoint, like I said, I think it's beautifully well done and just really well executed, no pun intended, all the way throughout the movie. I don't think there's a single bad shot or a single bad frame or anything in this movie. It looks incredible. Now, I know the director of this movie came from a film called Infested that came out in 2023. I think it was at a bunch of the film festivals and whatnot. I have not seen that movie because I am absolutely terrified of spiders. That is like a weakness thing for me. So I know watching that movie, I'll never get through it, because I even heard that as good as it was and how effective it is, I've heard if you have any kind of fear of spiders, it's only going to amp that up by like 1,000,000. So I'm like, no, but I've heard some of the sequences in the movie and how beautiful they look as well. So it does not surprise me at all that this movie looks just as good. Plus, I heard a lot of people that found out this director once he was coming on to this movie, that they were excited that, you know, he was going to be a part of this, because they were like really curious to see what he could do with an Evil Dead movie. So I give props to that. Like I said, the directing, cinematography, all that stuff is just A+. One of the things I kind of appreciate about this movie too is that it almost doesn't, it goes kind of a different route than our typical Evil Dead movies. Like, it's not a bunch of like, you know, teenagers in the woods or anything like that, or this cabin in the woods. You know, and that kind of did that with Evil Dead Rise, where it took place, you know, in the high-rise apartment and whatnot. But this one has like almost like a subtle message to it about, trauma, of course, because that's the big typical thing now. But there's also something else kind of mixed in where that trauma came from, and it kind of dives deeper into that message a little bit with where her trauma comes from. And I don't really want to say too much because I don't want to give any plot points away from the movie or anything like that. But it kind of dives into that. So you're kind of left with this overall message about the movie, about our main character and where she's at mentally and the things she's kind of going through. And I thought that was kind of a nice touch to bring to a movie like this. Like I said, our other Evil Dead movies, they don't really have that per se. Like there's a little bit in there to kind of sprinkle some stuff on like that. But for the most part, they're more of just like, hey, these teenagers are in the woods, some things happen, blah, blah, blah. Like you could say the 2013 movie, was really about substance abuse and getting over substance abuse and stuff like that. Like that little element was kind of in there. But I feel like this movie, though, overall really takes something with trauma and really kind of bakes a nice message in there. And it's not a lot to where it's going to like beat you over the head with that message or anything like that. It's just enough in there to where you can take it if you want, or you can just leave it as you want. It's one of those, you can go either way with it, but it was just kind of a nice direction to kind of take this franchise in, and really to kind of have something to say at the end of the day. I also really like the setting of this movie as well. I know this movie is technically, most of the settings for these movies are cabins in the woods and whatnot, except for Rise, which was the apartment complex or whatever. But this one's in this like huge dilapidated house kind of in the middle of nowhere, which I guess technically could kind of be that same formula as Cabin in the Woods. But it was kind of interesting to see all this happen in like a bigger version of this, of like a cabin or a house. Because like I feel like what they do with all the set pieces and the design of that is really cool. Like I think the little teaser trailer they put out for this movie near the beginning of their marketing, where our main character's crawling through that house and people are just getting thrown everywhere and drug across the floor and these deadites running around everywhere. I think that was a really cool sequence, and they kind of utilized using the house to their advantage throughout this movie. And I just think they did a really good job with that, because it goes with a little bit of a different flavor, but while still having that stuff that we're familiar with, stuff that kind of makes it more Evil Dead. I also thought that the element of snow was a really cool thing to add to this. I'm always a sucker for horror movies in the snow. I don't think we get enough of them. So when this movie, that was something I was not expecting in this movie. So when it started to snow, I was like, oh, okay, this could add a really cool element. Sadly, they don't do a lot with the snow element. It's just kind of there for a little bit. But it was cool to kind of have a little bit of that element in here, because it was, again, something different while also having a little bit of that familiar flavor that we all know and love. I also really enjoy the color palette of this movie. It's really more of this, like, it's almost like somebody took the movie and just drained most of the color out of it. Like, it's got this bleak and kind of grayish hue throughout the entire movie, to where it kind of leans into the feel of the movie based on how everything happens at the beginning. Really, the only scene that has full-blown color that I can remember is the scene at the beginning of the movie where this couple is at this restaurant, like this restaurant that they own, where you have the kind of like the neon lights and stuff outside. But after that, it's kind of like mostly everything is like that hueish gray, and it just has that real bleak feel to everything. And it really keeps that up all the way until the end of the movie. And I don't know, there was something pleasing about that, because it really just kind of helps set the tone for the entire movie. I think most Evil Dead films, we kind of walk into it knowing it's going to be pretty gruesome and bleak anyway. But having that color palette kind of to this movie really, like I said, really just kind of amps that up and really kind of leans into it. So it kind of makes you feel that dread and that uneasiness that, yes, something bad's going to happen. And having that kind of overlaid over everything really just makes it to where nothing really lets up throughout the movie. And the other thing I'll talk about is the gore. I think the gore in this movie is really ramped up. Walking into this movie, I heard a ton of things talking about how this is by far the most gruesome and bloodiest Evil Dead that we have. And I really think that might be the case. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that can really make you kind of wince and really feel that phantom pain and whatnot. And they do a really good job with that. I've heard people say that this is that director's version of a French extremity film. So this is like, it kind of goes that route. I don't think it goes as far as most of those films do, because I've never seen one, but I've heard some of the context of what French Extremity, how far they really can go. So I don't think it goes that far, but there is a lot of gore and blood and violence. So if you're looking for that carnage candy, it delivers that in this movie in spades. I feel like with most Evil Dead movies as well, we have moments of like these like gross out kind of moments as well. And there was really only like maybe one moment of that in this movie. And it was so funny because of the showing I was in. The scene that happens, per se, that's supposed to be kind of the more grosser moment, I thought literally a chick in the rows in front of me was about to throw up. Like the scene was going on and she's over there just like... So I thought that was pretty funny because to me the scene really wasn't that disgusting. I feel like they've pushed it a little bit further than that sometimes, but I don't know. To me, it didn't affect me. Maybe I'm just desensitized, or it's the fact that I'm dead inside. One of those two factors probably play into it. I think they do a really good job of having creepy scenes and these kind of tension-filled scenes. I'll get more of that into my mixed negative segment, but for the most part, there is some really great, effective, creepy moments in this movie. Like one comes to mind, I'll just say, of somebody under a sheet, for example. The way that whole scene was executed was really well done. There are some good scenes of tension. Like, to me, one of the best scenes of tension in the entire movie was the scene near the beginning of the movie where they're all at a dinner table, and I'm trying to tiptoe around things, but there is one particular character that you can tell has been, possessed by this deadite. So, like, they keep reaching for stuff, and there's arguments happening around the table. So, like, then the whatever they're reaching for will get taken away. So you kind of get a little bit of relief, but then something of that tension will ratchet back up again, and they'll grab another object. And so that it's kind of an ongoing thing throughout the thing until it finally pops off. So the whole time you're sitting there waiting for it to, something to happen. And it does a really good job of just keep twisting the tension tighter and tighter and tighter. And I thought that whole scene was immaculately done. I thought it looked great. And as for our acting in this movie, I think pretty much everybody does a really great job with what they're given in this movie. I think they're all really, really well done. They're all really believable. And I really kind of believed, honestly, that it was this really huge dysfunctional family who had this wife that really kind of nobody liked other than the brother and his girlfriend and whatnot. But I really believed all that. I really bought into all that. And I think these scenes where they have to become these deadites and whatnot are really, really good. Like there's some really, they look really effective with how they did their movement, which I know it's probably stunt doubles and whatnot, but there's certain movements that they do. But I think the central performances we get from all the actors are really well done and really well executed. Again, no pun intended. But I think that our main final girl that is in this movie, I think really she's the best of the bunch among the actors. I think because again, the amount of stuff she has to go through and deal with, which honestly really every actor in an Evil Dead movie, you're going to be put through the ringer. But I think everything that she gives in this whole performance, like I was talking about earlier, what she's dealing with, with her, that certain trauma, what it's caused by and whatnot, I feel she does a very good job of kind of carrying that throughout the movie and really expressing that in certain ways and really having to kind of live with that. And it's very much kind of the same thing as how I talked about in my Death of Robin Hood review that Hugh Jackman does, where there's a lot of scenes where you could tell she's really going through something, where she does a lot of acting with just her emotions and the looks on her face and whatnot. And you can tell she's really reminiscing and really going through some stuff and trying to work through it. So you have all that added onto this batshit crazy world of Evil Dead mixed into it. So I think she did a really good job with that. I would try to pronounce her name, but I know I will absolutely butcher it because I am terrible when it comes to pronouncing names. So for the sake of that, I'm not going to embarrass myself in front of the internet. But with that, I think she does just a fantastic job overall. And I don't know what it was, but it was almost like this different feel to her character, like a different flavor to her character that kind of stood out among other Evil Dead movies that we've got before. I mean, I know other characters in other movies have kind of been dealing with stuff and dealt with their own stuff, but I don't know why, but I just felt like maybe this one was written to be just a little bit of a deeper character. And this movie does have some dark humor to it. I think I think all of them really have some dark humor to it, but I think if you just have that dark sense of humor, you'll really find some stuff really kind of funny about it. Like there's a scene near the beginning where they're doing this funeral sequence and there's like construction going on outside and they're like, oh, should we wait for the construction to go before we do it, and they're like, no, they should be done by 12. They should be wrapping it up right now, so we should be okay. Then it does this hard cut to them trying to speak at the funeral, and all you can hear is like jackhammers and stuff going off in the background. And to me, it was hysterical. I thought it was hilarious. But there's like little, like dark humor moments like that sprinkled into it. And there's a grandma character that is in this movie that she is really the comedic relief of this movie. Her character kind of sprinkles that in pretty much from the moment she's introduced all the way to the end of the movie. So it was really cool to really bring back that dark, twisted sense of humor. And I think it lands really well in this one. I don't think it ever kind of takes you out of it by any means, or takes away from the gruesome or the horror or the anything like that, or the gory parts that are going on. I think all of it is really like threaded in perfectly to kind of fit with the whole flow of the movie overall. I do think this movie does a lot to kind of stand out on its own. It's not really connected to the other movies, and it doesn't really hint towards a connection to the other movies at all, other than kind of the books. Like I think it was it Rise that was introduced, talking about how there could be multiple books, and that director was like, yeah, it's all set in the same universe and whatnot, but there's just different books throughout and whatnot, so you never know what character, what book, what story's going to get. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. I think it was Rise. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Rise that introduced that. I could be wrong. It's been a while. But other than like them talking about like the books in this movie, and like some other lore and whatnot, I don't want to give anything away, but there is, other than that, there's really no connective tissue other than that, which is kind of a good thing, because I feel like this movie kind of pushed the limits of gore and whatnot, where that way it was kind of able to stand on its own a little bit more. So I went, so it was all right. It kind of let the movie breathe and didn't have to feel like it was connected to another movie or the universe or anything like that. It's the same way for Evil Dead Rise to me, where that movie kind of stands on its own. In my personal opinion, other than really the first three, really the rest of them could kind of really stand on their own. But I know there's this idea to have all of our final girls that are in these movies, plus Ash, if Bruce Campbell can do it, to come back and kind of do like a thing where they all meet up for one movie. I think that would be really cool. That's something I'm really interested in, but we'll see if that actually happens, because it would be interesting to see how they all come together. So that would be interesting to see, but it was kind of cool that this movie was more, they let this movie breathe kind of more on its own. Now, moving on to some of my mixed elements and or negatives about the movie is that one is this movie really feels more like a family drama than it does really an Evil Dead movie. There's hints of Evil Dead throughout this movie, obviously with the Deadites, and they have some of those iconic camera shots and whatnot that kind of remind you that you're in an Evil Dead movie. But I can't put my finger on it, but for the most part, this movie just did not feel Evil Dead to me. Like, it just didn't capture that feel, and I didn't feel like I was watching an Evil Dead movie. It just felt like almost it was it's like someone took the version of Evil Dead and was like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing of that, or my own spin of that. So it's kind of an odd thing to feel, because I was like, with Rise, I loved Rise. I thought that one was really good, and it had that same feel and captured the same everything that the other ones did. This one I felt was just, like I said, there was just something so off about it, and I really can't explain why I really put my finger on it. Also, I have to say that I don't think any of the characters were really likable in this movie. I really didn't like them. Like, I liked, obviously, our main final girl. But as for the rest of the family, I didn't care. Like, I just didn't really care about them or what they were dealing with, mainly because we really didn't get a chance to really know a lot about them. We didn't really get enough time to spend with them to really kind of establish a little bit of a connection there before all this stuff just happens. Everything just kind of dives right into it. He kind of brushes past a little bit about how we're supposed to kind of feel about these characters. Like, if you look at the first movie, we kind of gave a shit about those characters a little bit more because we got to spend some time with them. Same with the 2013, we cared about Mia and her journey. And even with Rise, we got a little bit of time with them, but they still were able to establish connection between the sisters and her family and whatnot. So there was still a little bit of that connection tissue there for that. But this one, like I said, it kind of dives right into it. So you don't really know a lot about these characters, and you're supposed to feel sympathy for this husband character that kind of, goes tragically in the beginning. But like I said, there's not enough time spent with them to really latch on to that. And as the movie goes and certain things are revealed, it makes you really like the family even less, and certain other characters even less. So I don't know. It's just something, there was nothing there for me to attach myself to really kind of grasp onto the characters. Like I said before, the girl that plays the final girl, I think she is the best part of the movie. She is really the heart of this movie. She's the one that's really going through all that stuff that you're supposed to attach onto. But even though I said it was really cool for her to be going through all this stuff because it was kind of a deeper story and a deeper character, but with that, it's like I still feel like we know the least about her. Like yes, she was in this relationship, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. But at the end of the day, it's like I still walked out of this movie feeling like I knew more about, Bruce Campbell's character or Mia or, any of those way more than I did any of the characters in this movie. So therefore, as these people are getting possessed and turned into these deadites and whatnot, and things start happening and wild, crazy stuff starts happening, I really am not rooting for the family. I'm like, who cares? So that's a big letdown for me because I love to be able to attach to characters. Obviously, I wanted our main girl to survive and whatnot, but for the most part, as this stuff was going on, I was like, just let him turn. I'm like, who cares? To be honest, the character that played the brother in this movie, it's not the actor's fault because this is how his character is written, but I found his character so unlikable throughout this movie, really to the point where he got on my last nerve because of how he was just so scared and terrified of everything, and you're yelling at the screen like, dude, you gotta do something at some point. Like, fucking do something. But so the way that they wrote his character, it made me just not a fan of him whatsoever. Like I said, it's not the actor's fault, it's the way he was written. But he was just the one character in this movie that I was like, I just did not like at all. And to be honest, I'm not a big fan of what they did with the final Deadite in this movie. I really don't like how they went about with that. I mean, I got why they did what they did with it, but for the most part, and for the execution of it, I don't think it was the best way to go. I did not like the look at it because it reminded me of one of those like early 2000s bad CGI paranormal movies where you see some stuff like that and you're kind of like, that could have been tweaked just a little bit more. So I wasn't really a fan of the direction they took that final Deadite. I thought if it was more gnarly looking and kind of used some practical effects, and maybe they did use some practical effects for some stuff, but you can tell a lot of it is heavily CGI'd. But I feel like if they would have kind of gone for a more like, I'm trying to say stuff without giving anything away, but if they would have went for a different kind of grotesque, really just look to that character, I feel like it would have been more effective and worked a lot better. But I was not a fan with the overall look and the way that they went about that. It kind of took me out of it and really made me feel like I was watching almost a separate movie near the end of the movie. Like I said, it just felt like one of those characters that you could have done something so much more with, and I was just not a fan of that. That, and to be honest, I really kind of found myself really struggling to kind of get invested in the story overall. Like, yes, I'm 100% here for the kills and the deadites and what crazy stuff they're going to do. But I don't know. Like I said, it's the same way I was trying to explain earlier. I have a hard time really kind of putting my finger on why I just could not get fully invested in things like I wanted to. Like, when Rise came out, I was fully into that. I was fully a part of it and on board, and I was into everything it was going for. But for whatever reason, this one, I just struggled to really latch myself into it. Like I said, maybe it's because I didn't really care about the characters. And I do really like this idea. I like this whole idea of this whole family element thing where it's like this deadites are going after this family one by one for a particular reason. I really like that idea. I think that's a solid idea and something really cool to bring to Evil Dead. But I feel like the concept was really there, but it kind of failed in its execution for the most part. And I'm not saying by any means that this is a bad movie. I think it's a solid movie, and I really still enjoy it. I think Evil Dead, to me, is one of those more consistent franchises. I would have said like Scream, but Scream 7 kind of knocked that off a little bit for me. But for the most part, this is still one of those franchises that keep going, that I still enjoy every movie. I don't think there's a bad movie in the lot of this so far. And like I said, this is the same way. Like I said, it's not my favorite Evil Dead, and I did have a lot of issues with it, but I still think it's a solid movie, and it's still one that I would watch again. And it did not, and because I was kind of deflated with how I felt near the end of this movie, it really didn't take away how, my excitement for Evil Dead Wrath. It's one of those things to where, keep making them, baby. Like, keep pumping them out. I'll go see them. I'll happily go see them because I really love this franchise. And until you hit me with one that's kind of on the level of Scream 7, then I'll probably then I'll probably be like, okay, well, there's another one gone. But for the most part, this is still a franchise that is up there with its consistency, and it really pumps them out. And like I said, obviously I like more than others, but at the end of the day, this is still a really solid run of a franchise. So overall, I still think this is a fun time at the theater. It's one that I would go check out because I think if you're an Evil Dead fan, you will find some enjoyment in it, and I do think this is going to be interesting to see how the reception of this one's going to be, because I've heard where some people left very disappointed and people really loved it. Like even some of the people that walked out of my showing last night, I heard them say that one was really good and solid and they loved everything about it. And like I said, even though that I did enjoy a lot of things about it and it has a lot of great things going for it, there's still a lot in it that left me disappointed. So it will be very interesting to see where people kind of land on it overall and to see what people feel, especially amongst the other Evil Dead movies. I'm very curious about that. But thank you, everybody. That is my review for Evil Dead Burn. If this is the review that you're finding me on, please come over to the channel and check out all my other 2026 reviews so far. I'll try to leave a playlist somewhere in one of these corners. I never know which one. And I'm very curious, what is your favorite Evil Dead movie? Like, do you prefer more of what Sam Raimi did? Are you a big fan of the 2013 one? Or is Rise your favorite? Or is Burn your favorite? Please comment below and let me know what your favorites are and why. And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That way I can see all of you in the next one. And thank you so very, very much.